welcome to our Talking Europe debate. We are at the European Parliament in Brussels, today lifting the lid on Europe's relationship with its African partners. On February 17th and 18th, the EU is inviting African Union heads of state to Brussels for a summit. France's President Macron says it's a chance to found an economic New Deal and finance Africa, declaring that the two continents' relationship has become, in his words, a little tired. Major areas of focus include development visas, education exchanges, as well as the particularly pressing questions of security and migration. Well, this all comes against the backdrop of post-colonial relationships and contemporary rivalries for influence in Africa with the likes of China, Russia and Turkey. Well, our two guests with me today are, on my right, Belgian MEP and Vice Chair of the European Conservatives and Reformists Group, Asita Kanko. Hello there. Our viewers may be aware you were born and grew up in Burkina Faso, and you regularly speak out here in the Parliament on issues relating to EU-Africa relations as well. We also have, opposite you, Swedish MEP Thomas Dubby from the European People's Party. You're the chair of the Parliament's Development Committee, which of course focuses on development issues all around the world, including, of course, in Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to get started just with where we are right now with this relationship. Obviously we've had 2 years of the pandemic, which has had an impact on EU-Africa relations. Borders were closed, connections were shut off, and then there's been big disputes about vaccines. A lot of donations from Europe to African states of vaccines, but an argument about whether African producers should be allowed to produce their own vaccines. So kind of mixed picture. Perhaps I'll come to you first, Thomas Dubby. Do you think that the pandemic has strengthened this relationship or shown cracks?
But I mean, obviously, the pandemic in general has been a setback when it comes to development. And when it comes to the cooperation, on the one side, I mean, the European Union has really shown that we want to show solidarity with Africa. We are, I mean, in the lead. We are the biggest financing of the COVAX program, for example, to make sure that we can get more jabs in the arms. But at the same time, the numbers are not impressive. And of course, this is creating a huge challenge because we really want to build a strong partnership between the European Union and Africa.
Well, I think what strikes me when the pandemic started and when we had the vaccine is that everything that people said in Europe is how we can help Africa. Mm-hmm. But I've seen very little thought about what can we learn from Africa. Because when we go to Senegal, they did very well with prevention regarding the pandemic. And in so many African countries, they do have experience in mass vaccination campaigns. As a kid, we had to line up to get so many vaccinations. In fact, to organize that with urgency is much more better organized with them than we sometimes saw in European countries, including in Belgium or France, for example. So it is a question of learning from each other and not only seeing the other as one in a position of only needing help. We could have learned from Taiwan as well.
So looking at the summit then, one of the big aims, Asita Kanko, of this summit is to launch an ambitious Africa-Europe investment package. What are the priorities for you from this summit?
For me, I would say I have a lot of expectations from this summit that has been postponed in 2021, although so many other meetings found place, and internet does exist in Africa, so the head of states could have connected. It made me think of people who don't want to eat at the in-laws and they pretend COVID, this because of COVID or anything else. It's just an excuse because there was nothing on the table. I think it's a bit sad that it has been postponed that long. I'm glad it's going to happen. I have a lot of expectations, but I do have little hope.
Why is that?
Why? Because people have been speaking about Africa since the 60s, and today some Western countries forget that we are no longer in the 60s, that aid is not the answer to everything, that we don't see the same evolution in improvement as the evolution of money that is invested. So what I would like to see is three main things. Stop aid, start trade, and also lobby for better accounting so that African companies can have more history to go to COFAS or Deloitte to get insurance for better trade with our companies. And 3, when we see an African, don't automatically think about, I want to help him or her. Also think, how can I trade with this person so that we can have a win-win situation and stop the nanny diplomacy? There is today a huge investment in paternalism and in corruption by using European money.
Yeah.
Do you recognize this characterization?
Yeah, but I agree with that. I think it is important, and especially from the European side, that we need to leave this donor-recipient mentality that we have had for a long time, and really try to build on a partnership and have frank discussions, I would say, because there are mutual also benefits. And for me, it is clear that, and what I expect and hope that perhaps this summit can highlight is the fact that we need to create millions and millions of jobs for young Africans. And that is so important for so many reasons, because that is also important so people can have a better life. They don't have to go and migrate to Europe. We will have more stability in the countries and so on. So I do hope that this investment package really can mean that we can talk more about trade and creating of jobs. I mean, of course, I'm also willing, and Europe is ready to also continue with our development aid. But I do think that it needs to become more conditional, because, of course, Europe also has some interest when it comes to climate change, when it comes to migration. And I also must say, perhaps on governance and human rights, because we see that Russia and China are players as well in Africa. But here I would say that European values are, of course, also important.
Well, just to pick up on that issue about values and these geopolitical rivalries with Russia, China, as you said, investing heavily in Africa, also Turkey massively. You know, the European Union asks for conditions when it makes partnerships, especially investment partnerships. You know, on human rights, for example, Russia and China don't make these demands, and they're offering a lot of money. China has very deep pockets. How demanding can the European Union be on human rights issues?
I mean, of course, it's not black and white, and sometimes even we have to be pragmatic and flexible. But I mean, I don't think. Let's take the Chinese, for example. What they are basically doing is that they are lending easy money, creating more debts in many countries. If they make investments, they take it for themselves. So
can the European Union make a strong argument for its place?
Basically, I mean, of course, some of our money will come with conditions. That's just how it is. But in the long run, this is not money that we are lending to the countries. This is opportunities for them. And I do think that many of we have very, very strong cooperation with many of the African countries. It's just that we have to be as smart as the Chinese are on how active we are. And I think that we have been a bit, set back, just doing the donor thing and not really taking care of our priorities as well.
Yeah. I think in any relationship, whether it is a love relationship or a diplomatic relationship, whatever relationship, you need to be aware of your own needs, and you need to have a win-win situation and a mutual respect situation. And what is lacking in the EU-Africa relation is that the West is not seeing what it can win in Africa and what its own needs are. We are actually, we have so much to win in Africa. Why is everyone else going to Africa? Strategically, why are we seeing China as the only place for our investments? We're just building dependence, and we could actually have more of that in Africa.
But just in terms of this rights conditionality issue, I know that you have campaigned for a long time on women's rights, specifically against female genital mutilation, which is still rife in many parts of Africa. In that sense, is that not something that you feel should be very strongly hammered home by the European Union, that, works to uphold women's rights in its own backyard? Why should it have any different conditions in its African...
No, I think I totally agree with the conditionality, and I wouldn't do it only for women's rights, but for governance as well,
as one example.
And even for migration, etc. So I think we need to put this in, and it's not only in the way in which we are teaming up with African countries, it's also in the way in which our companies are doing trade. Because when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, it's also a very good incentive for companies to show that when they trade, they're also taking some values into account, including women's rights and including women on the work field. But now, when we have a dialogue, we need to remember we're in 2022, not in the 60s.
I just have a very short amount of time left for both of you. I want to talk about what perhaps is an elephant in the room here, the issue of migration. You know, thousands upon thousands of people trying to go from Africa to Europe every single year in perilous conditions, fleeing either insecurity or looking for better economic prospects. Just a brief question to both of you. You know, does the EU want development in Africa in part to stop this migration, if we're honest?
Well, I mean, you know, if there is, it's not only development that can stop migration. There are people who actually have a job and who want to run away.
Indeed.
It's freedom, it's self-determination. You know, right now with the jihadism in the Sahel that we have been watching and we have been sending a lot of money, in which pocket did the money go? This is going to trigger more migration, even from people who have a job. So development only is not enough. It needs to be combined with security.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I think it is, I mean, this has been very controversial. I remember when I became the new chair of the Development Committee and I put forward a report saying that we should have conditionality also coming to migration. And we got also that report approved here in the European Parliament. It was very controversial when it happened. Yeah. But I think, you know, and I don't see a lot of problems with our African partners talking about this. They understand also that we need to find ways to also make sure that we can have less economic migration to Europe.
All right, that's a particular issue that I'm sure we can pick up on again in the future. But I'd like to thank you both very much for taking part in our programme. And a reminder for our viewers, that summit is on the 17th and 18th of February. Thanks very much for watching the programme. See you soon here on Talking Europe.